The war room buzzed with hushed urgency, its dim lighting casting elongated shadows across holographic displays of the galaxy. At the center of it all stood Captain Elena Voss, her steely gaze locked on the shimmering blue outline of the Tharis Fleet Coordination Array. The alien construct loomed like a spiderweb in the hologram, its tendrils weaving through enemy-controlled space and tethering their war machine together. Destroying it wasn't just a mission. It was a lifeline for humanity's survival. Captain Voss, General Adrian Kess began, his gravelly voice heavy with wariness. The Phantom Vanguard was built for moments like this. You know what's at stake. Failure is not an option. Voss didn't flinch. She nodded sharply, her expression betraying nothing of the doubt clawing at her gut. Her team was the best of the best, but even the best weren't invincible. Understood, sir. We'll get it done. The briefing ended, and the team gathered aboard the Nightshade, their sleek black cruiser designed to slip past even the most advanced Tharis scanners. The interior was cramped and utilitarian, filled with the hum of machinery and the faint scent of recycled air. Jax leaned back in his seat, chewing on a ration bar with a nonchalance that bordered on reckless. So let me get this straight. We're sneaking into an alien death trap, planting some boomsticks, and hoping they don't notice. Sounds like a party. Try taking it seriously for once, Jax. Erin snapped, his voice low and clipped. The infiltrator was already double-checking his equipment, his movements precise and methodical. This isn't a game. One mistake, and we're all dead. Leia, perched at her console, didn't look up. Her fingers danced across the holographic interface as she bypassed preliminary Tharis security protocols. Relax, boys. I've got eyes on their comm channels. If anyone so much as breathes the wrong way, I'll know before they do. Voss stepped into the cabin, her presence commanding immediate silence. Enough, she said, her voice firm but not unkind. We've trained for this. Focus on the mission, and we'll make it out alive. The Nightshade slipped into enemy territory, its cloaking systems rendering it nearly invisible. The Tharis orbital station soon loomed into view, its spires bristling with weaponry. A single misstep would light up the station's defenses like a supernova. Approaching drop zone, Voss said, her tone calm and steady. The team donned their exosuits, each equipped with adaptive camouflage and state-of-the-art tech designed for infiltration. As the airlock cycled open, Jax grinned. Let's go ruin someone's day. They floated silently toward the station, their suits rendering them invisible against the void. The vast structure seemed to pulse with life, its alien design both beautiful and foreboding. Inside, they navigated through shadowed corridors, avoiding patrols and bypassing security systems. Every step was a test of nerve and skill. Finally, they reached the array control room. Voss signaled the team to fan out, her eyes scanning for traps. Plant the charges, she whispered. We've got 10 minutes to make it out. The clock was ticking. The debriefing room was silent, save for the soft hum of the Nightshade's engines. Captain Voss stood at the center, staring at the holographic display of their next objective. The Starpiercer. Its skeletal framework bristled with alien weaponry, a design both elegant and terrifying. This isn't just a weapon, Leia said, breaking the silence. She stood at her console, her face illuminated by the blue glow of the hologram. It's a message. The Tharis want the galaxy to know what happens to those who resist them. Jax leaned against the wall, arms crossed. And here I thought they already sent that message by glassing half our colonies. Voss ignored the jab. We have a location. The Starpiercer's construction site is deep in Tharis territory, protected by a fleet and planetary defenses. We'll need to weaken their supply lines before we can get anywhere near it. Arryn frowned. And the data Laia pulled. The part she wasn't authorized to take. All eyes turned to Laia. She hesitated, then straightened. It's encrypted. I'm working on it. That wasn't the mission, Arryn said coldly. You risked all of us for something you can't even read. Enough, Voss snapped, cutting through the tension. We don't have time for this. Laia, break the encryption. Jax, Arryn, gear up. Our next target is a fuel depot supplying the fleet guarding the Starpiercer. We leave in 1 hour. The fuel depot hung in orbit around a massive gas giant, its spindly docking arms extending like the legs of a metallic spider. The Nightshade approached under full stealth, its cloaking systems working overtime to mask their presence from the depot's scanners. Approaching target, Voss said, her voice steady. Laia, status on their security grid? Almost there, Laia replied, her hands flying over her console. They've got automated defenses, but I can spoof a maintenance signal. It'll give us a 10-minute window to get in and out. Make it happen, Voss said. She turned to the rest of the team. We get hard and fast. Plant the charges, disable the main reactor, and get back to the ship. No heroics. The team deployed in silence, their exosuits blending seamlessly with the depot's shadowed interior. Arryn led the way, his movements precise as he scouted for patrols. Jax followed, a satchel of explosives slung over his shoulder. Charges set, Jax whispered, his voice crackling through their comms. Laia worked furiously at a terminal, bypassing the reactor's safety protocols. I need another minute, she said, her voice tight. We don't have a minute, Arryn warned. We've got movement on the upper levels. Alarms blared. Red lights bouthed the depot as Thaurus security drones swarmed into the corridors. Fall back, Voss ordered. The team fought their way back, the narrow halls erupting in bursts of gunfire and explosions. As they dove into the Nightshade, the charges detonated, engulfing the depot in a fiery inferno. But as the ship sped away, Laia's decrypted files flashed on her console. Her face paled. Captain, she said softly, we've got a problem. There's a spy in high command. The tension aboard the Nightshade was palpable. The team sat in the debriefing room, their faces illuminated by the grim glow of Laia's decrypted files. Lines of alien script and human translations scrolled across the display, revealing a horrifying truth. Someone within humanity's high command had been feeding the Thaurus critical information. Captain Voss leaned forward, her eyes locked on the text. This explains how the Thaurus knew our colony routes and defense strategies. Every move we've made, they've been one step ahead. Arryn's jaw tightened. How do we know this isn't a Thaurus ploy? Fake intel to turn us against each other. Laia shook her head, her voice steady but tinged with unease. It's not a ploy. I cross-referenced the data with our secure channels. These logs are legitimate. Someone high up is selling us out. Jax exhaled sharply, pacing the small room. A spy in high command. That's above our pay grade, Captain. What do we do with this? We keep it quiet, Voss said, her tone firm. Until we know who we can trust, this stays between us. Laia, wipe these files from the ship's database. Keep only an encrypted backup in case we need proof later. Laia hesitated but nodded. Understood. The Nightshade plunged deeper into Thaurus territory, the weight of their discovery hanging over the crew. Their next target was the Thaurus Weapon Foundry on a volcanic moon, a critical hub for building components of the Starpiercer. Destroying it would buy humanity precious time. The moon loomed in the viewport, its surface scarred by rivers of molten rock and violent eruptions. The foundry sat like a fortress amid the chaos, shielded by electromagnetic fields and patrolled by squadrons of Thaurus drones. "We'll insert here," Voss said, pointing to a narrow lava tube on the holographic map. "It leads directly to the foundry's power core. Arin, you'll take point. Laia, you're on overwatch. Jax, you handle the charges." "Sounds like a walk in the park," Jax quipped, though his grip on his gear betrayed his nerves. The insertion was harrowing. The team moved through the lava tube in single file, the oppressive heat testing the limits of their exosuits. Aaron led the way, his HUD scanning for movement. As they approached the foundry's core, Laia's voice crackled in their comms. "Heads up, I'm seeing increased drone activity near your exit route. You'll have to be fast." Voss acknowledged with a curt nod. "Jax, set the charges. We need to be out of here in 5. The team spread out, their movements synchronized. But as Jax placed the final charge, a chilling sound echoed through the chamber, a mechanical whir followed by the rapid approach of Thaurus security drones. "They're here," Aaron shouted, firing the first shot. The chamber erupted in chaos as the team fought to hold their position. Jax detonated a smoke grenade, obscuring their retreat as the foundry's alarms blared. "Charges set," Jax yelled. "Let's move." The team sprinted back through the lava tube, explosions ripping through the foundry behind them. But as they reached the extraction point, Laia's voice came through, urgent and strained. "Captain, we've got a problem. Our cloaking systems just failed. The Thaurus know we're here." Voss gritted her teeth. "Then we fight our way out." The Nightshade powered up, its weapons systems engaging as swarms of Thaurus ships closed in. The mission was a success, but their survival was now a question of sheer will and skill. The Nightshade bucked violently as enemy fire raked across its shields. Alarms blared, and warning lights flickered throughout the ship. Laia's fingers flew over her console, trying to reinitialize the cloaking systems, but every attempt was met with failure. Shields down to 40%. Laia called out, her voice strained. "The stealth grid is fried. We're an open target." "Jax, get to the rear turret." Voss barked as she gripped the controls. The Nightshade twisted sharply, narrowly dodging a barrage of plasma bolts. On it. Jax sprinted toward the turret, sliding into position and unleashing a hail of return fire. The ship shuddered under the force of another hit, and a warning flashed across his HUD. Ammunition reserves critical. "They're swarming us," Erin said, standing by the viewport, his jaw tight. 4 fighters at 6 o'clock, 2 more closing from starboard. Voss cursed under her breath. They were outgunned and outnumbered. The mission had been a success, but escaping with their lives was far from certain. "Leah, plot us a course out of here," Voss demanded. "I'm trying," Laia shouted. "The Thaurus are jamming our nav systems. We're flying blind." Another hit rocked the ship, sparks raining down from a damaged console. Hull integrity at 75%, the computer intoned in an eerily calm voice. Jax's voice crackled through the comms. "Captain, I'm almost out of ammo. We can't keep this up." Voss clenched her fists, her mind racing. Then a thought struck her, desperate, but their only chance. "Leia, how far are we from that molten moon's upper atmosphere?" "Too close for comfort," Laia replied, her brow furrowed. "Why?" "We're going to use it," Voss said. She opened the comms to the entire crew. "Everyone strap in. We're diving." "What?" Jax's voice was incredulous. "You heard me. Thaurus fighters aren't built for atmospheric conditions this extreme. They'll burn up before we do. Hang on. The nightshade nosedived toward the molten moon, the glow of its rivers of fire growing brighter in the viewport. The temperature inside the ship rose as the external heat became unbearable. Heat shields are at max capacity, Laia warned. We can't stay down here long. Just a little longer, Voss said through gritted teeth. Behind them, the pursuing Thaurus fighters began to falter. One by one, they veered off course, their hulls unable to withstand the punishing heat. One ship, braver, or more desperate, than the rest, held on until its engines finally detonated, a fiery burst against the hellish backdrop. "We've lost most of them," Laia exclaimed. Voss pulled the ship up sharply, the nightshade skimming the surface of the moon before breaking free of its gravity well. The surviving Thaurus ships fell back, unwilling to continue the chase. As the nightshade slipped into the relative safety of deep space, the crew let out a collective sigh of relief. "Captain," Laia said softly, breaking the silence, "that maneuver won't work again. They'll adapt." Voss nodded grimly. "Then we'll have to adapt faster." The crew of the Nightshade sat in silence in the dimly lit war room, their exhaustion palpable. The ship was safe, for now, but their escape had come at a steep cost. Repairs were underway, and while the physical damage could be patched, the growing rift of distrust within their ranks was harder to mend. Captain Voss broke the silence. "We need to address the real threat. The Thaurus aren't just winning because of superior technology or numbers. They have someone on the inside." Jax leaned back in his chair, his face shadowed. "And you're saying it's someone high up in high command. That's a hell of an accusation." "It's not an accusation," Laia said, pulling up the decrypted files again. "It's a fact. The data we stole confirms transmissions sent from Earth to the Thaurus flagship. Whoever they are, they've been providing intel for months, maybe years." Arun frowned. Why would anyone betray their own species like that? What could they possibly gain? "Power," Voss said, her voice cold. "If the Thaurus win, they'll leave a few humans in charge to manage what's left of us. High Command's full of politicians. Some of them would sell their souls for a chance to be on top." The room fell into uneasy silence. Laia's voice broke through, hesitant but resolute. "There's more. These files, they mention us. The Nightshade. Someone knew we were coming." "What?" Arun's voice sharpened. "You're saying the Thaurus were waiting for us." "They didn't know the exact mission," Laia clarified, "but they knew we'd be in the sector. That's why their response was so quick. If we hadn't improvised, we'd be dead," Jax finished, his tone dark. Voss stood, her presence commanding. "That's why we can't go back to Earth. Not yet. If the mole knows we're onto them, they'll bury the truth before we can expose it. Our only chance is to gather more proof. We need to hit another Thaurus target." Arun crossed his arms. "Another mission. We barely survived the last one, and you want to dive back in." "We don't have a choice," Voss replied firmly. "If we don't act, humanity's fighting this war blind. The Thaurus will pick us apart, one colony at a time." Jack sighed, running a hand through his hair. "So, what's the target?" Laia brought up a hologram of a massive station floating in deep space. "This is Laxis Prime, a Thaurus communications hub. If we infiltrate it, we can access their real-time transmissions and trace the signal back to the mole on Earth." Arun let out a low whistle. "That's suicide. A station that size will be crawling with security." "It's a risk," Voss admitted, "but it's a calculated one. We've pulled off worse before." She turned to her team, her eyes burning with determination. This mission isn't just about survival, it's about striking back. Are you with me? One by one, her crew nodded, their resolve hardening. Good, Voss said. We strike at dawn. The nightshade slipped through the silent void, cloaked in the blackness of space as it approached Lax's prime. The station loomed ahead, a vast structure suspended in the cold, its surface dotted with weapons platforms and heavy security gates. Every inch of it was designed to repel invaders, and the crew knew that getting in was only half the battle. Voss studied the station on her console, her gaze sharp. We'll need to breach the outer defense perimeter first. Jax, you're our entry point. Once you disable the security grid, we'll infiltrate through the secondary docking bay. Erin, Leah, stay sharp. You'll provide cover once we're inside. Erin clenched his fists, his body vibrating with the energy of anticipation. We've got one shot at this. If we mess up, we're dead. Jax grinned, the adrenaline already kicking in. Dead? Nah. I prefer a good explosion over a slow death any day. The tension in the air was thick as the nightshade edged closer to Lax's prime. Voss's mind raced, going over the plan once again, knowing that one mistake could doom them all. Prepare for deployment, she ordered, her voice steady. Jax, take the lead. The exterior of Lax's prime was a fortress, its surface covered in layers of security sensors and automated defenses. Jax expertly piloted their shuttle through the asteroid field surrounding the station, using the terrain to obscure their approach. The moment they reached the docking bay, he set to work. I'm in, he muttered under his breath, his fingers flying over the controls. The air was thick with tension as the shuttle's engines powered down. A brief moment of silence, then the low hum of the station's outer gates deactivating. We're in, Jax confirmed. Good work, Voss said, nodding. Stay alert. We've got no room for mistakes. The shuttle's hatch hissed open, and the team suited up, weapons at the ready. The secondary docking bay was a maze of dark corridors and industrial machinery, the sounds of the station's internal systems humming eerily in the background. They moved swiftly, the quiet click of their boots the only sound as they navigated the halls. Erin led the way, his rifle raised. Leah brought up the rear, her hacking gear ready to disable any systems they came across. As they approached the command center, their comms crackled. This is Leah. I'm picking up movement. Multiple Thaurus patrols converging on your location. Understood. Prepare for engagement, Voss ordered. Erin, on me. Jax, get those doors open. The command center was just ahead. A thick metal door stood between them and their goal, a firewall of sorts protecting the central hub. Jax moved forward, working with practiced precision to bypass the locks. A loud bang echoed through the hall. They're here. Erin shouted as the first Thaurus soldiers appeared at the far end of the corridor, guns drawn. Without hesitation, Voss opened fire, her shots precise and deadly. Erin followed suit, his rifle booming as he cleared the path. Go! Go! Jax yelled, his hands flying over the keypad as the door finally slid open. The team rushed inside, and the room exploded into chaos. Thaurus soldiers filled the command center, but Voss and her team were faster, their training and instincts honed from countless missions. In the center of the room stood the station's main terminal, Voss's target. Leah ran to it, her fingers dancing across the controls. I've got it, Leah said breathlessly. I'm tapping into their network. A sudden, ear-piercing alarm sounded. The room plunged into darkness. Lights out, Jax muttered, even as he moved to cover the door. They sealed us in. The battle had just begun. The darkness of the command center was oppressive, the flashing red emergency lights the only source of illumination. In the eerie silence, the sounds of heavy boots echoed as Thaurus soldiers prepared to breach the room. "We've got company," Jax muttered, his voice low as he moved to the nearest corner, weapon aimed at the door. His fingers clenched around the rifle, heart pounding, but his mind was calm. He had been in worse situations. Voss's eyes scanned the room, assessing the situation. "We can't stay here long. Laia, how's the hack coming?" Laia's fingers were a blur over the terminal, sweat dripping from her forehead. "It's harder than I thought. Their network is encrypted with something beyond anything I've seen. I'm breaking through, but it's going to take time." Erin checked his ammo, his eyes narrowing. "We don't have time. They're coming for us." Voss nodded grimly. "We'll hold them off. Laia, you focus on getting that intel." The door burst open with a loud bang. Thaurus soldiers poured into the room, their glowing energy rifles raised. Without hesitation, Voss sprang into action, her sidearm blazing. Our shots were precise, hitting the soldiers with deadly accuracy. Erin followed suit, taking down another two before they had a chance to retaliate. The air was thick with the acrid smell of burnt ozone as the soldiers fell, but more kept coming. "They're relentless," Jax said, firing into the growing wave of enemies. "It's like they'd got endless reinforcements." "They do," Voss said, gritting her teeth. "This station is designed to handle a prolonged siege. But so are we." Laia's voice broke through the noise. "I'm in. I've got access to their data core. Now we trace the signal back to Earth." The moment Laia's words hit the air, the command center seemed to hold its breath. "Got it," Laia said, her voice sharp with triumph. "I'm tracking the transmission. It's coming from a location on Earth. We've got the mole's identity." Voss's heart skipped a beat. They were so close to the truth, but it wasn't over yet. "Laia, you need to pull out of there. We've got what we came for." A loud explosion shook the room, followed by the unmistakable sound of reinforcements landing on the deck. "Too late," Jax said with a grim smile. "We've got company." Voss's jaw clenched. There was no choice now. "Everyone, fall back to the shuttle. We're leaving." But as they moved toward the door, an unexpected figure appeared in the doorway. A tall, imposing Thaurus officer, his armor gleaming even in the dim light. He was flanked by two elite guards, each one carrying an energy weapon capable of cutting through any barrier. The officer's eyes locked with Voss's, and for a moment, time seemed to slow. His voice was calm, almost too calm. "You've done well to get this far, Captain, but it ends here." Voss's hand went to her sidearm, her finger brushing against the trigger, but she didn't fire. "Not yet." "Who are you?" she demanded. The officer stepped forward, his grin chilling. "I'm the one who's been pulling the strings all along. And now, you will die." The standoff in the command center was a moment frozen in time. Voss's fingers hovered over the trigger of her sidearm, her mind racing. The officer's presence was suffocating, the weight of his words settling in. She had known they were up against a shadowy force, but she hadn't anticipated facing the mastermind himself. The officer's grin deepened as he raised his hands, as if to show he wasn't immediately a threat. "You have no idea what you've stumbled upon, Captain. The truth is more than you can comprehend. The Thaurus—" "Cut the crap," Voss interrupted, her voice cold. "I've been to hell and back, and I don't need a villain monologue to know that you're the one who's been feeding the enemy our secrets. So why don't you stop playing games and tell me how much damage you've caused?" The officer's eyes narrowed, his amusement fading. "You think you've won. No, you've only played into our hands. The Tharis were never the true enemy. They were just a tool. The real war is coming." The words were like a jolt of electricity. Voss's mind reeled. A tool? The real war? "Enough riddles," Arin shouted, aiming his weapon at the officer, but Voss held up a hand, stopping him. She needed answers. She needed to understand. "Explain," Voss demanded. "Now." The officer straightened, his posture perfect, almost regal. "You're not ready, but you will be. The one who controls Earth controls the galaxy. You've seen the potential of your kind. Your adaptability, your resilience. That is the true power. The Tharis may win this war, but humanity will shake the next one, and it will be on their terms." Voss's heart pounded in her chest as the pieces began to fall into place. She had suspected something larger was at play, but hearing it from the officer's lips made it real. The war they had fought, was it all a distraction? "How many more are there?" Voss asked. The officer smiled, a twisted sense of satisfaction in his expression. "Oh, more than you can imagine. But you've done your part, Captain. You've paved the way for the revolution." With a sudden movement, he lunged, reaching for a concealed device at his belt. But Voss was faster. In an instant, her sidearm was up, and 2 precise shots rang out. The officer crumpled to the ground, his final breath escaping in a low hiss. The room fell silent, save for the sound of heavy breathing. Jax was the first to speak. "Did we just kill the mastermind?" Voss didn't answer right away, her eyes scanning the fallen officer's body. She had expected more, but now, in the quiet aftermath, all she felt was the weight of a war that still had no clear end. "No," she said finally. "He was just one piece. But we have what we need. We know the truth now." Leia nodded, her fingers flying over her console. "I've downloaded everything. The data's secured." "We've got a long road ahead," Erin said, looking around the room. "But at least we've taken the first step." Voss looked out the command center's windows at the stars beyond. The war was far from over, but humanity had made its mark. The Nightshade and its crew had changed the course of the conflict, exposing a hidden truth that would reverberate across the galaxy. They had struck at the heart of the enemy, and the echo of their blow would be felt for generations. "You know what to do," Voss said, her voice steady. "Let's get out of here." As the crew made their way back to the shuttle, the Nightshade prepared to leave Laxus Prime behind. They had their mission and a new purpose. The war had only just begun, but humanity's covert forces had made sure their enemies knew they were no longer fighting in the shadows. They were fighting on their terms. And that was a victory in itself.